Sydney Lutensky,
Rennie Herrick,
Ethan Hall,
James Dine,
Ariana Gonzalez.
because that's the North and the South.
the North, the Free States, and the Maine Nationalism Group to support the national government. The South, or the slave states, and the Maine Sectionalism Group to support a strong state system. These two are different from the way they run to the towns and businesses, to their everyday lives, and this is exactly how starting with the South.
Sectionalism was a big thing in the South, and mostly it meant that they cared what happened to them instead of everybody. They wanted what was best for them, their way of life, and everything, meaning just that. They wanted what was best for their plantations, meaning their businesses. A plantation was a place where they used slaves to pick cotton, and the cotton was in order to make them money, and the slaves weren't treated very well. They were whipped or beaten, and after they picked the cotton, they were forced to plant more or pick more and pick the seeds out of them. So because of all this labor, the cotton gin was invented by Eli Whitney. Because of all the labor, though, if the cotton gin hadn't been invented, slavery would have disappeared way sooner. But cotton gin made it boom by picking the seeds out of as much cotton as one man could do, once as much as 50 slaves could do in one day. And all that took was the spin of a wheel by one or two slaves. So the plantation owners went out and bought more slaves. But that wasn't very good for the slaves, because the slaves would be separated from their families, little did they know it, and given new names at the slave auction. A slave auction was a place where the slaves were taken from their homes and overseas and put on top of a stand for an entire crowd of plantation owners to see. And then the highest bidder would get the slave, would be able to name them and take them home and force them to work. Hard labor every day of the week, every hour they were awake, if they were sleeping. Well, the slaves didn't like any of this, especially being taken from their families, so the natural occurrence of being escaped slaves was really common. The slaves, most of them after being beaten with a whip or taken or put bells on them, couldn't do it by themselves. So that's where Harriet Tubman, an escaped slave by herself, and the Underground Railroad came in. They would help slaves on a route to the south, to the northern states or Canada, to help the slaves get out. Harriet Tubman, being an escaped slave herself, using the Underground Railroad, eventually went back to the south and helped free other slaves. The way that slaves on the Underground Railroad would know if a conductor would live in a house was they would have a lantern on in the window or some other obvious signal that the law didn't know. They were breaking the law by doing this, but they strongly didn't like slavery, so they did it anyway. They hid the slaves out in basements or secret compartments.
Now that you've seen how the South runs, you're going to notice that the North seems better, but only by a little, because it has problems too. By that I mean pollution. So let's see how it got there from the start.
The nationalism was basically the same thing as sectionalism in the South. It was big. The Northerners wanted what was best for everybody and everything. They wanted the strong national government, and the way they had all these made the government stronger was the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution in France sort of got caught on to America because they were being able to make goods and stuff faster than the average one person by hand. So they wouldn't share their secrets with America, but Americans started to take and pay people to bring over their inventions from France. This was illegal, so they had to sneak on over, and we paid them in gold or currency, and they made the money, and we got the machines. Factories started springing up everywhere, and Mostly they ran on river power and pulleys and other stuff. And if a pulley was broken, some factories made pulley parts and stuff like that, also known as interchangeable parts. Since they were all the same, they could be used for different machines and just be swapped in. It made life a lot easier. But of course, with all this came pollution. Where pollution, the factories would dump stuff in rivers or in places that we didn't want it to be. They didn't see the downside to this or people getting sick, and if they did, they didn't care because it was good for them because the factories bring new jobs and the new jobs made populations in cities boom, which was actually pretty good for them. But until now, nobody really paid attention to the pollution. The end.